Welcome to Jesus Leads Bible Journey, where we dive into God's Word to strengthen your faith and guide you in living according to His promises. Join us as we journey through Joshua chapters 13 to 24, where God fulfills His promises by giving the Israelites their inheritance in the Promised Land. These chapters focus on the division of the land, the importance of obedience, and Joshua's final instructions to the people before his passing. In this video, we explore how the tribes received their inheritance, the renewal of God's covenant, and the call to remain faithful to God's commands. Chapter 13, the remaining land to be conquered. When Joshua had grown old, the Lord said to him, "You are now very old, and there are still very large areas of land to be taken over. This is the land that remains, all the regions of the Philistines and Geshurites, the people of the mountains of Lebanon, from Mount Halak to the entrance of Hamath, the area of all the Sidonians. I myself will drive them out before the Israelites. Be sure to allocate this land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have instructed you. Now divide it as an inheritance among the 9 tribes and half of the tribe of Manasseh. The land given to the 2.5 tribes. The other half of the tribe of Manasseh, the Reubenites and the Gadites, had already received their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had given them. These 2.5 tribes had received their inheritance when Moses had given it to them, and they had built cities and fortified their lands in preparation for the long journey ahead. The inheritance of Reuben. Moses had allotted the territory to the tribe of Reuben according to their clans, beginning from the Arnon River to the north, and stretching to the edge of the territory of the Ammonites. They had settled and occupied towns in the wilderness and along the Jordan, the territory east of the Jordan River. The inheritance of Gad. Moses had also allotted land to the Gadites, covering areas such as the cities of Jazer and all the cities of Gilead, as well as the land of the Ammonites. This region extended from Mount Hermon to the land of Bashan, including territories from the side of the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee, with all its fruitful lands. The inheritance of the half-tribe of Manasseh. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given them land stretching from the boundary of the other half of Manasseh to the land of Bashan in the city of Ashtaroth. This territory included a large portion of Gilead and extended all the way to the river Jabbok. The portion for the 9 tribes. The rest of the land was allotted to the remaining 9 tribes, with each tribe to receive a portion of land for their families and descendants. It was a vital assignment for Joshua to divide the land and to ensure that the promises of God to their ancestors were fulfilled. The Lord spoke to Joshua, instructing him to divide the land just as he had promised. This was a time of completion, a time for Joshua to distribute the land to the people, establishing their inheritance for generations to come. In Joshua chapter 13, we see the land being divided among the tribes of Israel. While Joshua had led the people to victory and the territory had been conquered, there was still work to be done. The remaining land was to be divided and claimed, and God promised that He would drive out the remaining enemies from the land. This chapter emphasizes the faithfulness of God in keeping His promises to Israel and the importance of obedience and leadership in fulfilling His plans. Joshua, though old, was still called to divide the inheritance, ensuring that God's promises would be passed down to future generations. Chapter 14, Caleb's inheritance. When Joshua had grown old, the Lord spoke to him, "You are now very old, and there is still much land to be taken." The Lord reminded him of the remaining lands that still needed to be conquered. The tribes had already settled in some parts of the land, but much of it was still to be possessed. God's promises were still being fulfilled, and the task was not complete. Caleb's bold request. At this moment, Caleb, a man who had faithfully followed God for years, came to Joshua. He reminded Joshua of the promise made to him when he was 40 years old, when he had been sent to spy out the land of Canaan. "You know the promise God made to me," Caleb said. "I followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly, and I was the only one who stood firm. The other spies made the people afraid, but I trusted in the Lord." God had promised Caleb that the land he walked on would be his inheritance forever because of his faithfulness and obedience. Now at the age of 85, Caleb stood before Joshua, as strong as he had been when he first spied out the land. "I am just as strong now as I was then," Caleb declared. "I am ready to take on the land God promised me." He asked for Hebron, a land inhabited by giants, the Anakites, known for their fortified cities. But Caleb had no fear, for he trusted that the Lord would give him victory. Joshua, seeing Caleb's faith, blessed him and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. From that day on, Hebron belonged to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, because of his wholehearted devotion to God. This city, once called Kiriath Arba, was named after Arba, the greatest of the Anakites. But Caleb, a faithful servant of God, overcame the giants and took possession of the land that had been promised to him. In this chapter, Caleb's story stands as a testament to the power of faith and obedience. At the age of 85, Caleb claimed the land promised to him decades earlier. His unwavering trust in God's ability to fulfill his promises, even in the face of giants, teaches us that faith has no age limit. When we remain faithful to God, He will always deliver on His promises. Chapter 15. The inheritance of the tribe of Judah. The land allotted to the tribe of Judah, according to its clans, reached southward to the boundary of Edom, to the wilderness of Zin in the extreme south. The southern boundary began at the Bay of the Dead Sea, at the southern end of the Jordan River. From there, it went south to the slopes of the mountain of Akrabbim and continued to Zin, passing along the south of Kadesh Barnea and continuing on to Hazar Adar. The boundary then turned back toward Asmon, where it ended at the Brook of Egypt. This was the southern boundary. The eastern boundary was the Jordan River, and the northern boundary ran from the Bay of the Sea across the waters of the Jordan River. It passed by Beth Hogla, then proceeded northward to Beth Arabah and on to the Stone of Bohan. As the Israelites settled into their inherited land, Caleb, son of Jephunneh, a descendant of the tribe of Judah, came to Joshua and made a special request. "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, at Kadesh Barnea concerning you and me," Caleb said. "I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land, and I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly." Caleb went on to remind Joshua that Moses had promised him the land he had walked on, the land of Hebron, as his inheritance. Despite the obstacles and challenges, Caleb, now 85 years old, was still determined to claim the land promised to him. He was strong and able, just as he had been when he first explored the land. "Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day," Caleb requested. "The Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified, but the Lord helping me, I will drive them out, just as he said." Joshua, recognizing Caleb's faith and obedience, gave him the land of Hebron. From that moment on, Hebron belonged to Caleb and his descendants, because he had followed the Lord's commands with all his heart. Hebron, which was once called Kiriath Arba, was named after the great giant Arba. But Caleb, with his faith and obedience to God, had conquered this mighty city, and it became his inheritance. After Caleb's inheritance was granted, the tribe of Judah received their portion of the land. Their territory extended from the south all the way to the Dead Sea and included cities such as Ziklag, Eshtemoa, and Bethlehem. The boundaries of Judah's land were marked and assigned to the various clans within the tribe. Each of these cities, towns, and villages became part of Judah's inheritance, as God had promised. In Joshua chapter 15, we see the fulfillment of God's promises to Caleb, one of the faithful spies who trusted God's word even when others doubted. His request for Hebron and his victory over the giants in the land is a testimony to the power of faith and obedience to God's instructions. The chapter also describes the allocation of land to the tribe of Judah, marking a significant step in the settlement of the Promised Land. This chapter underscores the importance of obedience and faithfulness in receiving God's promises. Caleb's story serves as a powerful reminder that those who follow God wholeheartedly will receive their inheritance and that God's promises are sure. Chapter 16, the inheritance of Ephraim and Manasseh. The lot for the tribe of Ephraim was taken. Their territory was situated between the territory of Judah and the Manasseh tribe, with the Jordan River on the eastern side. The boundaries of their land stretched across the hill country, along the slopes, and toward the Mediterranean Sea. Ephraim received a land that was fertile and abundant, perfect for the future prosperity of their tribe. The land included some key cities like Bethel and Ataroth, as well as fertile land for agriculture. Next, the land allotted to the half-tribe of Manasseh was also described. The eastern part of Manasseh's territory was given to the descendants of Joseph, while the western part was divided among the remaining tribes. It was a large territory stretching from the Jordan River to the coasts and encompassed many fertile plains. However, there was a significant issue that arose for both Ephraim and Manasseh. These two tribes had strong, large populations, but their territory wasn't enough for all of them. They came to Joshua to express their dissatisfaction, asking for more land to settle on. Joshua responded to their complaint by encouraging them to go and clear the land of the Canaanites who lived in the hill country, as their land was fertile and there was room for their families to expand. He reminded them that the Lord had blessed them, and it was their responsibility to take possession of the land that God had promised them. The land they received was indeed generous, but it was still a challenge for the people to settle and conquer it fully. Nevertheless, they were encouraged to be strong and courageous, just as Joshua had been when they first entered the land. In the remaining portion of the chapter, we learn that the descendants of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, were established as tribes with substantial inheritances. The two tribes were seen as blessed by God, but with that blessing came the responsibility to follow God's commands and trust in His provision. In this chapter, we see the fulfillment of God's promises to the descendants of Joseph through the Ephraim and Manasseh tribes. These two tribes were blessed with abundant land, but their success was contingent upon their faithfulness and obedience to God. Joshua's leadership shines through as he handles the challenges of distributing the land. His faith in God's guidance is evident as he encourages the tribes to be diligent in clearing and conquering the land, rather than simply settling for what was given. Chapter 17, the inheritance of the half-tribe of Manasseh. The land allotted to the half-tribe of Manasseh was situated on the western side of the Jordan River, extending across the hill country and towards the Mediterranean Sea. The Manassites were a strong and numerous tribe, and they received a significant portion of land that extended through the fertile areas and into the plains. However, as they began to settle, the children of Joseph, which included both Ephraim and Manasseh, came to Joshua with a concern. They expressed that the land they had been given was not enough for them, especially considering their growing population and the presence of the Canaanites who were living there. The leaders of the half-tribe of Manasseh came to Joshua and said, "Why have you given us only one portion of land as an inheritance, seeing that we are a numerous people whom the Lord has blessed?" They pointed out that the land given to them was not enough for their expanding tribe and asked for more land. Joshua responded by telling them that they should go and clear the forested hill country of the Canaanites and claim that land as their own. He also reassured them that they had plenty of space to grow and that they would be able to drive out the Canaanites, just as God had commanded. Joshua encouraged them to take hold of the land with courage and trust in God's strength to drive out their enemies. Joshua, seeing the faith of the Manassites, reminded them that they were a great and powerful people and that they were not limited in their inheritance. He told them, "Since you are so numerous and your land is so large, go up to the forest and clear land for yourselves there." The tribe of Manasseh was able to expand and claim new territories, but Joshua emphasized that their ability to conquer more land depended on their willingness to follow God's commands and trust in His strength. The chapter continues by detailing the inheritance of the remaining families within the Manasseh tribe. It explains that the land was divided according to the clans, with each group receiving a portion. The tribe of Manasseh was one of the most prominent and powerful tribes of Israel, and their inheritance reflected God's promises to His people. In this chapter, we see the half-tribe of Manasseh coming to Joshua to request more land. This chapter highlights the importance of faith, obedience, and the willingness to step into God's promises. Joshua's response to them was both practical and encouraging, calling them to trust in God's strength and to boldly take possession of the land. This chapter serves as a reminder that while God's promises are abundant, there is also a call to actively take possession of what God has given us. Sometimes we are called to clear the land, to face challenges head-on, and trust that God will give us the strength to overcome. Chapter 18. The division of the land continues. After the Israelites had settled in the land, Joshua called together the remaining 7 tribes. The land had been conquered, but they had not yet taken possession of all of it. Joshua said to them, "How long will you wait before you begin to take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you?" The Israelites were reminded that it was time to claim the land and take action. Joshua gave instructions to select 3 men from each of the 7 tribes to go out and survey the land. They were to divide the land into sections and report back to him. This was necessary so that the final divisions could be made and each tribe could receive its inheritance. When the men did as Joshua instructed, they went out to survey the land, and they divided it into 7 parts, making sure to record all the details. Their task was to map out the boundaries of each tribe's inheritance. Once the surveying was complete, the men returned to Joshua, and the next step was to cast lots before the Lord to determine which portion of the land would belong to each tribe. The division of the land was done according to God's plan and was led by Joshua's guidance. The first tribe to receive its inheritance was the tribe of Benjamin. Their land was situated between the tribes of Judah and Ephraim, in the central part of the Promised Land. The boundaries of Benjamin's land extended from the Jordan River to the western hill country, and it included important cities like Jericho. This portion of the land was given to the tribe of Benjamin through the casting of lots, fulfilling the promise God had made to their ancestors. After Benjamin's inheritance was allotted, the remaining portions of land were divided among the other tribes. Each tribe was given its portion based on its size and the number of people. The land was assigned to them by the Lord's guidance, and they were responsible for taking possession of it and living according to God's commands. As each tribe received its portion, it was a reminder of the faithfulness of God, who had kept his promises and led his people into the land that he had promised them. In this chapter, the land of Canaan is divided among the remaining tribes of Israel. The chapter highlights God's faithfulness in fulfilling his promises as the land is divided according to his will. It also emphasizes the importance of obedience, as the people must actively take possession of the land and live according to God's laws. This chapter also teaches us that action is required to claim what God has promised. The Israelites had to survey, divide, and possess the land. Similarly, in our own lives, we are called to take action in faith, trusting in God's promises and guidance. Chapter 19. The division of the land continues. The process of dividing the land among the tribes of Israel continued in Joshua. Chapter 19, with the tribe of Simeon receiving their inheritance. The land was allotted to them within the territory of Judah, which was a smaller portion compared to the other tribes. Despite being smaller, the tribe of Simeon was content with their inheritance and began to settle into the land. The other tribes, including Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and the Danites, also received their portions of the land as Joshua cast lots before the Lord to determine the boundaries. The boundaries of each tribe's land were clearly defined, ensuring that the inheritance was fairly distributed according to God's promises. The tribe of Zebulun received their portion of land in the central part of the Promised Land, between the tribe of Issachar and the Sea of Galilee. Their land was situated near important trade routes, making it a prosperous and strategic location. The land included fertile plains, towns, and the opportunity for agricultural growth. The people of Zebulun were called to possess the land, work the fields, and build their communities just as God had instructed. The tribe of Issachar was allotted land to the north of Zebulun, with fertile plains and towns. Their inheritance included rich agricultural land, ideal for the tribe's needs. As with the other tribes, the people of Issachar were given the task of settling in their portion and living according to God's commands. The tribe of Asher received their inheritance along the northern coastline near the Mediterranean Sea. This territory was known for its fertile land and access to trade, making it a valuable possession for the Israelites. Asher's land was rich in resources, providing both agricultural and economic opportunities for the tribe. The tribe of Naphtali was given land in the northern part of Canaan, stretching from the Sea of Galilee to the region of Lebanon. Their inheritance was situated in a fertile area, perfect for farming and settlement. The tribe of Naphtali was blessed with a land of abundance, ready for their occupation. The tribe of Dan received their inheritance in the coastal plains and hill country. However, the Danites struggled to fully possess their territory due to the presence of the Philistines. Despite this challenge, the Danites remained determined to secure their land. In the end, they went on to conquer a new city, Leshem, which they renamed Dan. This chapter highlights their persistence in claiming the inheritance promised to them. In Joshua chapter 19, the inheritance of the remaining tribes is fulfilled, as each tribe receives its portion of the land. The chapter emphasizes the faithfulness of God in keeping His promises, as each tribe begins to settle into their new homes. It also highlights the responsibility of each tribe to take possession of their land, work the land, and remain faithful to God's commands. Even though some tribes, like Dan, faced challenges in fully possessing their land, they were reminded of God's faithfulness and the importance of persistence and obedience. The story of the Danites' struggle to claim their land serves as a reminder that God's promises are worth the effort and perseverance. Chapter 20, the cities of refuge. The Lord spoke to Joshua, saying, "Tell the Israelites to designate the cities of refuge as I instructed you through Moses, so that anyone who kills a person accidentally and unintentionally may flee there and find protection from the avenger of blood." The cities of refuge were meant to provide safety for someone who had killed another person by mistake. This was to protect them from being killed by the avenger of blood, a relative of the deceased who might seek vengeance. These cities would be places where the person could escape and have a fair trial. God instructed Joshua to designate these cities across the land so that they were accessible to everyone in Israel. The Israelites were to set aside 6 cities of refuge in total, 3 on the east side of the Jordan and 3 on the west side. When a person accidentally killed another, they were to flee to one of these cities. Once inside the city gates, they were to present their case to the elders and remain there until they could stand trial. If they were found innocent of deliberate murder, they would be allowed to live in the city until the high priest at the time died. The avenger of blood could not enter the city of refuge and harm the person seeking protection. This system ensured that justice was served while also showing mercy, offering protection to those who had unintentionally caused harm. The 6 cities of refuge were spread throughout the land of Israel, ensuring that anyone in need of refuge could reach one of them without traveling too far. These cities were strategically placed near major roads and were well known to the people, providing access and safety. Kadesh in Galilee in the hill country of Naphtali, Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, Hebron in the hill country of Judah, Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau in the tribe of Reuben, Ramoth in Gilead in the tribe of Gad, Golan in Bashan in the tribe of Manasseh. Each of these cities was chosen for its accessibility, ensuring that justice and mercy could be easily reached by anyone who needed refuge. In this chapter, we see the establishment of the cities of refuge, a system put in place to provide justice and protection for those who accidentally caused harm. This chapter highlights the balance between justice and mercy, showing that God provided a way for the innocent to be protected while ensuring that wrongdoers were still held accountable. These cities were a part of God's plan for the Israelites to live in peace and security. They not only provided a refuge for those who had committed unintentional acts, but also demonstrated God's compassion and fairness in His laws. Chapter 21, the cities for the Levites. Then the heads of the Levite families came to Eleazar the priest and to Joshua son of Nun, and to the heads of the other tribes of Israel. They spoke to them at Shiloh in the land of Canaan and said, The Lord commanded through Moses that we be given cities to live in, with pasture lands for our livestock. So the Israelites gave the Levites cities from their own inheritance, just as God had commanded through Moses. The Levites did not receive a specific portion of land like the other tribes. Instead, their inheritance was to be cities scattered throughout the land, and these cities were assigned to them from the other tribes' territories. The Levites were set apart for service to God, and the cities given to them were meant to be places where they could live and fulfill their priestly duties. These cities were scattered throughout the land to ensure that the Levites could serve all the Israelites, no matter where they lived. The total number of cities given to the Levites was 48 cities in all. These cities included 6 cities of refuge, which were designated places where someone who committed accidental manslaughter could flee for safety, as discussed in earlier chapters. The Levites also received pasture lands around their cities for their flocks and herds. The land surrounding each city provided the Levites with the resources they needed to live and work, but the cities themselves were given by the other tribes, ensuring that the Levites were cared for in their role as the priestly class of Israel. The division of these cities is described in detail in the following sections, showing how the cities were divided among the families of the Levites from each of the tribes: Judah, Simeon, Benjamin, Ephraim, Dan, Naphtali, Issachar, Zebulun, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh. For the Gershonites, the Kohathites, and the Merarites, 3 different Levitical families, the cities and pasture lands were distributed among them. Each family received cities in various territories, ensuring that the Levites had access to all areas of the Promised Land. The chapter concludes with a reminder of God's faithfulness in fulfilling his promises to the Levites. God had kept his word, providing for the Levites and ensuring they were settled in the land, even though they did not receive a territorial inheritance like the other tribes. Their inheritance was not land, but their special role as servants of God in the tabernacle and later the temple. And the cities given to them were a part of that calling. In the end, the Israelites fulfilled their duty to care for the Levites, ensuring that they were equipped to continue their service to the Lord. The chapter also reminds us that God's promises never fail, and he provides for his people according to his plans. In Joshua chapter 21, we see the Levites receiving their inheritance through the allocation of cities across Israel. This chapter underscores the importance of God's faithfulness and his provision for those who are dedicated to his service. The Levites' role in the spiritual life of. After the conquest of the land, Joshua summoned the Reubenites, Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, who had been given their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan River. These tribes had faithfully assisted their fellow Israelites in conquering the land of Canaan, and now the time had come for them to return to their homes. Joshua spoke to them, saying, "You have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I have commanded. You have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest, return to your homes, to the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan." Joshua praised them for their faithfulness and loyalty, acknowledging their important role in the conquest of the land. Their commitment and courage had helped the other tribes gain victory, and now they could go back to their own inheritance. Before they left, the eastern tribes built an altar by the Jordan River, a large and impressive altar visible to all who passed by. This altar sparked concern among the other tribes of Israel. They feared that the eastern tribes were turning away from God and establishing their own place of worship, separate from the one at Shiloh where the tabernacle was located. The other tribes of Israel were prepared to confront the eastern tribes for what they thought was a violation of God's command to worship at the central sanctuary. A delegation of leaders from the 10 tribes, led by Phinehas the priest, was sent to the eastern tribes to investigate this matter. When the delegation arrived, they questioned the eastern tribes about the altar they had built. The representatives of the eastern tribes responded with a clear explanation. "We did it for fear that in the future your descendants might say to ours, 'What do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you, the Reubenites and Gadites. You have no share in the Lord.' So your descendants might make our descendants cease to fear the Lord. They explained that the altar was not meant for sacrifices, but as a witness between them and the Western tribes, to remind future generations that they too worship the same God. Upon hearing this explanation, Phinehas and the leaders of Israel were satisfied. They recognized that the altar was a symbol of unity, not division, and the misunderstanding was resolved. The tribes returned to their territories in peace. In this chapter, we see a potential conflict arise between the eastern tribes and the rest of Israel, but through dialogue and understanding, the issue is resolved. This chapter highlights the importance of communication, unity, and faithfulness among God's people. The building of the altar serves as a reminder that obedience to God's instructions and the need to remain unified in worship are essential for the nation of Israel. Though the eastern tribes acted out of concern for future generations, their actions were not intended to divide the people, but to ensure that they would always be connected by their worship of the one true God. The book of Joshua marks a significant moment in the history of Israel. After wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, God's people finally entered and took possession of the land he had promised to their ancestors. Joshua, as God's appointed leader, guided Israel through a series of victories, and the land was divided among the 12 tribes. Throughout the book, we see God's faithfulness, leadership, and covenant fulfilled. Joshua's life serves as a reminder to us of the importance of obedience to God's commands. It is not just about possessing physical land, but about living in the blessings and promises that come with trusting and following God. Joshua's final exhortation to the people was clear: choose to serve God faithfully. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. This call to remain committed to God echoes through the ages, inviting us to make the same choice in our lives today. The story of the Israelites' conquest of the Promised Land is a testament to God's power, faithfulness, and the blessings that come with living in obedience to His will. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the book of Joshua. From the conquest of Jericho to the division of the land, we have witnessed how God led His people into their inheritance, fulfilling His promises to them. Through this study, we've seen the importance of faith, obedience, leadership, and God's unwavering faithfulness. As you continue your journey of faith, remember that God is always with you, guiding you into His promises. Like Joshua, we are called to live in obedience, trust in God's leadership, and claim the blessings He